It's time for another Sunday Bible study introduction. And our text this week comes out of Proverbs chapter 5. And it's a great text. It's full of direct meaning and indirect meaning, but it's really about choosing what is best over what's good or what's better. Let me kind of explain it this way. Think about the first car that you drove as a teenager or young adult. Chances are, if it's been a long time and it was a cool enough car, that thing gets auctioned off for quite a bit more money than you purchased it for. Things that are worth it get more precious and valuable with age. Maybe even a toy you had as a child, that if you still had it set aside on a shelf in its original packaging, it could be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. So there are things that are worth treasuring over time. And it really even takes time to reveal how valuable they are. And that's what the author of Proverbs is trying to tell us, that there's wisdom that knows it's worth investing in a relationship of marriage that is in God's design, not in the world's desire. And so the teaching in Proverbs chapter 5 is mostly an admonition of what to stay away from. To stay away from sexual promiscuity and infidelity. But there is this one passage in beginning in the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th verse about the pleasure, the joy of being engaged in a faithful, heterosexual, monogamous relationship that God designs between a husband and a wife. And that's such a precious thing to God that He starts off with creation with it's not good for a man to be alone, with having Adam and then bringing Eve, this helpmate. And then the scriptures end in Revelation 21 with heaven and earth coming together as a bridegroom and a bride. Folks, all throughout Scripture, this image of fidelity between man and woman is used by God to give a description of what it's like to be in a relationship with Him. So again, there's something worth pursuing here. Think about that great value. So it's worth trying to lean into what is best. Think about a journey that you take. I mean, when you want to go somewhere, you might plan into your program into your phone or your GPS the destination that you want to go. It'll say, put in where you want to go. Then it'll give you the choice of the routes that you want to take. You may want to avoid the highways or tollways or side routes or stay off dirt roads or anything like that. But it gives you those choices that you can take to follow. Man, if you enter in the destination and you choose the route and it tells you how long you're going to travel and how far it's going to be, man, you can kind of enjoy the journey along the way because you know the destination is where you're headed. Man, it's the same way for us in our marriages. Man, we need to have this idea that we're headed toward the best destination for us. Charlie Shedd wrote a lot of books about marriage years ago. Two little books he wrote were Letters to Karen and Letters to Philip, giving advice to a young couple before they were to be married about how a wife should treat a husband treat a wife. And some of the things are maybe a little bit dated, but the wisdom is not. It endures. He tells one story about a couple that just seemed to be so happy after decades of marriage, and the wife, even though time had certainly taken its toll on her, as it does on all of us as we age, he said, but there's something incredibly beautiful about her. And after he talked with the man about his relationship with his wife, and he said, it's because I've poured into her. Sure, she was gorgeous when she walked down the aisle, but she's more beautiful to me now, after all these years, than when we first began our journey together. Because I've chosen to see our marriage as the place where God's best can happen. Man, that's the way it is for us, right? Somehow the world looks at Christian marriages and sees that's not where the best happens. But let me say it without being indiscreet here. It is where the best happens in our Christian marriages. That's where it is to happen. So consider that. Now, let me kind of think again about the difference between good, better, and best with you. We live in a consumer society where we can make choices on what we buy. They market things to us in so many different ways. You can buy the good refrigerator or the better refrigerator or the best fancy refrigerator with a digital screen on it. But at the end of the day, they're just boxes that do a good job of keeping your food cold. That's really all you want. But there are some times when maybe buying the best is worth the extra resources that you can pour into it. Take tires, for example. Man, I learned a long time ago that I don't want to buy the cheap tire. I don't want to buy this what they call the good tire. I don't want to even buy the better. I want to buy the best if I can possibly afford it, because the last thing I want is for my wife to call me from the side of the road and say, "Ooh, I'm so glad we saved money on those tires, but I'm in a wreck because they failed." Man, we want the best. That's what we want. And not just in tires, we want it in our marriages, in our relationships. So I'm going to say this to you today, whether you're married or whether you're not married, this isn't about holding up just being married as the highest thing. This is holding up God's plan for sexual purity as the highest thing. That's what this text is saying. And next week's lesson leans into choosing the right, the wisdom of God that we're giving. Here in this text, we learn that Satan is the one that perverts God's plan. Satan is the one that is foolishness, and Jesus is the one that has brought us wisdom, Sophia, for us. So many people get off the best path for life. They feel like they've ruined their Christian walk, and maybe they're even dissatisfied with following Jesus because they put so little into the journey. They were unfaithful to Christ. Man, there's people that are unhappy in their marriages mostly because they've chosen to be unfaithful to their marriage. Man, it's not too late to start now being faithful to Christ, to pour yourself into being faithful in marriage and in your purity. And it is not too late. That's where the graceful goodness of God gets poured in. And it begins with starting where we look now. In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus says, "The eye is the lamp of the body, and if the eye is healthy, your whole body is healthy." What we choose to look at matters for our health. And when we choose to look at God's plan, we become light ourselves. The author of Proverbs in chapter 5, verses 15 through 19 says, hey, this is, when we drink water from our own cistern, we have fresh water from our own well. It is a place of great joy and great pleasure. Man, our community around us, the country around us, needs to see Jesus followers exemplifying not the good, not the better, but the best practices in all things, not just in sexual purity. Then their choice to follow Jesus too won't be because we've made some compelling argument, but because we have demonstrated genuine repentant change of direction in our own life, and they can choose to follow Jesus and God's plan for their life too, so that they will realize the incredible value that God has given. God bless you. Choose wisdom.